everyone. Welcome to Hitting the Shed. Today we are here with Paul Barron. Why don't we start by telling everyone who are you, what are you doing now, and how are things?
Things are good. I'm so happy to be busy. I'm on the Frozen tour, Disney's Frozen tour, and actually about ready to go to a 2-week layoff right after the end of this week. But we're real steady. Things look great. The audiences are incredible. So if that's any indication, we have good job security. So it's
That's
good.
great. That is awesome. So good to hear. Are you going to do anything nice on the layoff? Are you going to go home?
I'm going to go home and spend some time in the new condo we bought that is mostly unfurnished, at least at the time that I left for work. Yeah, it's basically setting up house for a couple of weeks.
Nice. That will be fun too. I love it. So, how long are you going to be on the Frozen tour? Is it open-ended? What does the future look like?
We are open-ended, yes. We've got bookings, I think, until I want to say it's the end of June of 23, and then they've got another couple cities. There's a gap, and then another couple cities going into the fall. So, and they tell us that we're pretty much going to be booked, real solid. We'll probably get 3 to 5 years out of this, but I have
Wow.
heard that before, and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I remember the producer coming out saying, "Oh yes, we're going to run for 5 years. This is great." And 4 months later, he was back out saying, "We're closing the tour. And would you mind taking a 40% pay cut?" So,
Ooh.
that was a different production company. Disney is amazing, so I don't anticipate any problems at all. They're amazing.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Well, that's amazing to have so many years, hopefully. Fingers crossed with that. Are you going anywhere that you're especially excited about?
I actually find something cool about every city pretty much, and I remember having this conversation years ago with an actor who was the Juan Perón character on Evita, and he was just determined to hate the city. We were in Norfolk, Virginia, and I remember him at the stage door going, "Oh, I hate this city." And I said, "Well, did you go over to the fan district?" And no. Well, did you go over to here? No. Well, did you? No. And so he was determined, and that's the way it was going to go. So for me, um, I can always find something, like for instance, Appleton is our next stop after the layoff, and it's a cute little college town. And I'm going to go see John Daniel. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to
Oh,
chat.
how nice.
Yeah, and the the time of year that we're going to be there is beautiful. So there's always something about every city.
I love it. So this is a quick bonus question, but how did you prepare for Frozen when you first got the call? And then, because I know you've told me something really amazing about preparing for a show, and I was hoping you could share that with everybody else.
Sure. Well, I'll do my whole spiel on that if that's okay. Um, when I get a book, well, the first thing I do is I look through it and I find all the troubling parts, that I might have to work in my fingers and get into my ears, and any of the tricky bits. Um, the second step then is pacing and just trying to figure out how to get to the finish line as strong as I started. And so what I typically do, it's kind of a methodical approach. I start with the exit music or from the bows and the exit, and I'll play it all the way through right up to the end. And then I'll just back up one more song or, section where it might involve a fair amount of playing, and I'll play it from there all the way to the end. And I keep backing up. I keep adding more to the start of the second act, I guess, until I'm starting at the entr'acte, and I play it all the way through. And then I keep backing up, so eventually I've played the ending and the exit music and the bows where they throw the kitchen sink at us, because nobody's singing or dancing on stage. It's all about, getting their accolades up on stage. So So we're working really hard. So by the time I've done that process of working all the way back to the overture and getting all the way to the end, I've probably played the ending and hopefully successfully gotten to that ending dozens of times. And that's just a process for pacing, the way I work that out. And then that would be usually, oh, I don't know, a week or two before I'm going to start a tour. Because, when you start a tour, it's nonstop rehearsing until opening night. And then you're probably doing 8 shows that week and traveling the next, and then 8 shows again. And if you're rehearsing new local orchestras, then you have to go through the same process every single city. So I want to make sure that I'm really strong. Um, so I do that up until about a week before I would start the show, I guess. And then my next process is compressing all the practice into just the parts that I play, and where where it might be a minute and a half rest or something. If there's a book scene, I'll compress that to 30 seconds. Or if it's a 12 measure rest in the music, I'll compress that down to maybe 2 minutes, get the horn off my face, little little lip fluttering, and then I go back to it again. And so anyway, that's my long-winded process.
I love it, and I totally see how that can be helpful. So, what are you practicing right now, now that you're in the middle of it?
Right now, it's just maintenance because we've got a system now. Well, I don't know if you'd call it a system, but I play lead on one show a week, and so I want to make sure that I'm staying strong for that, because surprisingly, just playing second for me, and if I'm just sort of doing maintenance practice, is not quite enough with that I feel really confident and strong to jump up to that lead book. So I'm doing some Adam routine stuff. I do about an hour or so a day of that when I'm playing second, which is I usually do the matinee on Saturday playing lead. So anyway, throughout the week I'm doing Adam stuff up until Friday, and then I've got the double show Saturday, double show Sunday. So that's kind of enough playing there. I've always got Scott Belk's second book in the pit with me, and so when I go into the theater and I've got my warm up kind of done and everything, and I'm sitting around, maybe about 15 minutes before the show, I'll spend about 5 minutes getting tortured by that book, and then that kind of brings the chops together, and I feel good to go.
I love it. And you mentioned those 2 show days. So, do you still warm up the same on those days, or do you cut everything in half?
I I usually, well, first of all, my warm up is um is not the same every single day. It's not that I do a different warm up, but I do a different amount of a warm up, and I approach it um in the way that my body is telling me that I need to spend more time, maybe in the low register, pedal register, or I pick it up and things feel pretty good, and I can compress my warm up a little bit. So my warm up on a playing day when I show up to the theater could be as little as 5 minutes. I could also need as much as 45 minutes if things are feeling really stiff and I feel I need to work through things. So that's a hard question to ask. I usually typically start out in the same way. I'll do some lead pipe buzzing, and then I work my way up and down through the horn, just doing some expanded scale things, stuff like that. But if it feels really good, I've learned the hard way, it's best to put it down and save the really good notes for the show. So, you know, anyway, so I can't completely answer that question because it does change from day to day depending on how I feel.
Makes sense. I love it. And now I'd love to hear more about your book. So, could you tell us what it is, how you created it, and how you decided to put What in there?
I might be long-winded again. I remember doing a interview with Bobby Shew, and he said he kissed the Blarney Stone and could talk forever. Um, I love that saying. And I am partly Irish, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, for about 30 or more years, playing a lot of these Broadway shows, I thought, wow, it would be really cool to be able to have access to a Broadway excerpt book. You know, you get these calls, especially Kate, you know how it is. You get a call to sub,
I do.
and you got to be ready. And it might be any number of a dozen different shows. You know, if there's regional shows and Broadway shows and all that. So I thought, wow, you know, I grew up practicing, learning and practicing all the Broadway excerpt books, and there were stacks of them. And there's nothing there, nothing equivalent in the Broadway world. And so, like I said, for 30, 35 years, I talked about it. Other friends of mine had talked about it. When I started sort of formulating the idea and thinking that I was actually going to get off my butt and actually start this thing, I'd mentioned it to a few people and they go, oh yeah, I've been planning to do that for years, like 40 years ago, 20 years, whatever, you know, like, yeah, I've got this great idea. Well, they didn't follow through, and I finally decided, you know what, now is a good time. I want to compile this stuff. So I think part of your question also was, how did I choose what material to go into it? That was easy. I started with all of the shows that I had already played and really enjoyed, and so that was the basis of it. And it was kind of like wildfire. It just took off. I reached out to a few people to ask if they may have some more PDFs that I could take a look at, and all of a sudden I had, I don't even know, is it 55 musicals or something? I think I have in the
I
first
think
book.
that number sounds right.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And all of a sudden I had all of this material. Then it was a matter of trying to figure out how to make it truncated enough that it would all fit into a book. And because, you know, an excerpt book, you don't want to have 20 measures of rest in somebody's excerpt while they're sitting there doing nothing. So, you know, I had to figure out what snippets were what I call the money makers, you know, and figure out what was really important, the things that when the creatives are there, the producers, the music supervisor, all of that, the things that their ears are most open to hearing, and the things that they just kind of know would be the troublesome spots for any given player. So I want to make sure that those are for sure covered, because I think if you get the money makers, the rest of it, you know, you can get a pass. Not that we want to play where we need a pass, but you've already sort of proven yourself if you get those big money makers down and sound good. So that was how I chose that. Now, there was the copyright laws to deal with, and that was something that my publisher, I basically said, hey, I'll write the book and I'll do all of this stuff, but I need you to handle the legal part of it and find out what we can use, what we can't, and if we can use a show at all, you know. And so he did all of that legwork, and then he came back to me and he said, well, what we have to do is make this more educational, and so it's under that umbrella legally. And so, for instance, in the case of West Side Story, I had to really snip that one up quite a bit. What I would have loved to have done is have 2 or 3 pages of playing, because there's 2 or 3 pages of playing in a row in the real show when you have to do it, but that was too much for the copyright part. So I took a piece here, and then, okay, if it repeats 6 times, you only need to see it the one time to get it under your fingers. And then hopefully, you know, you'll get an advanced book and you go, oh, now I have to play this 5 more times. Okay. But at least you've got the material under your fingers, in your ears, you know, in your chops and so on. And you may have to work on the pacing then when you get the advanced book. But hopefully all the material is presented in my books. And then I I was kind of asked to do a second volume of it, and then reaching out to different people and hearing from friends and colleagues and stuff. And I think you made a couple of requests, Kate, as well.
I
Uh,
did. Well, I remember we talked about like other things to include, and then it's always funny to me to see so many people posting about it, and then I'm like, I know him, and I know that book, and it's really fun.
and so that was the choice for this, some of the content for the second book was, oh, I played curtains. Why didn't you put curtains in the first book? Well, there's already 55 in the first. I had to stop somewhere. It's 250 pages and 10
It's a lot of
pounds.
shows and a
Yeah.
lot of pages.
Yes,
Still,
it is.
do you think
So
you'll make a third one?
I don't know. It would be fun because there's so much stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess part of it would be getting the raw materials, the PDFs from some of those really obscure shows. But it would be fun to do that, and maybe make it more um, like sections of stylistic thing. I don't know. I'm just thinking out
I
loud
was
right
about to
now.
say that. I think doing some style stuff would be really, really cool. And hearing you explain about different things, whether it's like a shake or like a certain kind of articulation. Um,
That's a good idea. I'm going to keep that.
yeah. Well, good, because I'm not going to do it. So you have to do it now.
Okay. Deal.
But, and I loved what you said about sitting on it for so many years and then finally deciding to do it. Um, Phil Snedeker, one of my former teachers, always told me that, everyone has a lot of great ideas sitting in their desk drawer. And I remember hearing that and being like so frustrated because I was like, I'm trying to make this project, like I'm working on it. And he's like, so go do it. And it's like, yeah, that's why you made the book and other people had the idea for 40 years and didn't do it. So
That's right.
love it. So, some other thoughts about practicing. What is one thing that you think everyone should be practicing? And maybe it's about something that you've noticed being on the road or just in all of your years of playing.
Well, this might be kind of a generic thing to say, but efficiency, I think, is when I turned 40, and I'm about to turn 59 soon. Um, the first thing I thought was, I'm going to have to learn to play more efficiently. And I think I was relatively efficient prior to that, but it just seemed to like, okay, here's my 40th birthday present to myself, learn how to play more efficient. And so that's been my quest and my journey, I guess, for almost the last 20 years. And what I'm seeing on the road from local players, but also players that are traveling with us, is that we could all be a little bit more efficient and streamline our playing to make it easier, and so that we don't have peaks and valleys throughout the week. Some younger players may come out really strong at the beginning of the week, but you can tell the difference, hear the difference between a Sunday night show and a Wednesday night show or something. So my desire is to be able to give the audience the same show when I feel my freshest and strongest as when I feel my worst and most defeated. So that's a lot of it, efficiency, and whatever that means to any given player, be it backing off on volume a little bit, um, maybe not trying to play for the cheap seats when you're sitting in front of a microphone that's only 6 inches from your bell. That was a lesson that I had to learn year after year after year. And maybe sometimes even still, if you can't hear yourself well enough. So that's a good portion of it, I think.
That's such a good one. And I loved your comment about Sunday versus Wednesday shows. That's a huge one. I think so many people are, I mean, trumpet players especially are always like, oh, my face is tired. And I just was on a really, really short tour this weekend. And I definitely felt like my face was tired for the first one, but we had another show the next day. And so, like, nobody cares that my face was tired one day and then the next day we did the same show and it felt better. It's like it should sound the same both times. And I just love that so much. It's such a
Exactly
good
true.
rule
Yeah. I've
to
always
live
felt
by.
that whoever pays, $150 to see the show on Wednesday, um, well, I guess I should flip it around the different way. Whoever spends $150 to see a Sunday night show should get the same quality, both from the cast and the orchestra. And I
Definitely.
feel like it's my duty to be consistent and give them, the exact same product. You don't go into a store and get, you know, for the exact same price, a really terrible, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an analogy. It's not
No,
working.
that's a good one though, for sure. Yep, quality is everything. It's too funny. Um, well, we're just about done, but I guess I have one more question. So, what do you think the future of trumpet looks like? What do you think young people should be doing more of, or other people should do? What is it looking like? I know things obviously have been changing a lot in the pandemic, but what do you see happening?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball and could foresee the future, but it's pretty obvious that orchestras are getting smaller. So my advice to everybody, really, but since I'm a trumpet player and you're a trumpet player, we'll concentrate on that. I would say these days you have to be even more well-rounded to play Broadway and to make a living playing the trumpet, unless you land, a coveted orchestra gig where you can just be an orchestral player. We have to have so many different styles, so many different, hats that we wear. So my recommendation is to learn everything you can about all those styles, be able to improvise a little bit, to get by. um, and it's not to say that everybody has to be, Freddie Hubbard or Bobby Schuh or Tom Harrell, but at least know the theory and how to get through it, and not, embarrass yourself. Now, physically, as trumpet players, we're seeing shows, as you know, Kate, that only has one trumpet. So you have to be the lead player. You have to be sometimes a second reed player, maybe playing underneath a clarinet. Newsies for me was quite a challenge in that way, because there was a lot of pounding, King in New York, all that stuff, and playing like a big band swing lead trumpet player. And then there was all this almost subtone second clarinet things to do, and then a low Barry sax part on that, so you got to cover a lot more bases now, I think. That's physically, but then also musically, it's pretty easy to see the chronology of it. You start coming out of vaudeville, and you've got a certain amount of styles of music that you're expected to play, Kiss Me Kate, things like that. um, and then as the years progress, now we got rock stuff, and there's disco, and there's, and and now we're seeing a lot more classical stuff too. So the genres, the styles of music that we have to encompass now to be successful in this business in this day and age is a lot larger than it used to be. If you were just going to be a Broadway player, you had a certain style or certain skill set that you had, but you didn't necessarily need to have anything over a high C. Now we have to have G's, A's, and not just one here and there. What was it, High School Musical? I can't remember how many double high A's it had in it, but lots. So we have to have the whole ball of wax, I guess.
Yep, that's really good advice. I love it. Well, how can people find you and find your book and keep in touch with you?
I would love it if they keep in touch with me. Paulbarron.net is my website. So everything is there pretty much. I should probably update it. But as far as my book, I have four, and I've got a fifth one in the works right now. And they're all available at the letter Q, so qpress.ca for Canada.